Back after USWNT star Megan Rapinoe criticized his controversial comments on the lack of support for women's sports in their fight for equal pay as male athletes. Dre responded saying, quote, "At the end of the day, what Megan wants and what I want is the same thing. And if she believes that doing something a certain way gets her to the end goal, I'm all for it. And if I believe doing something a certain way gets to the end goal, I'm all for that. So if we can both do something to move the needle to get to the end goal, great. I have no complaints with whatever it is that she wants to do, or any woman athlete or anyone that's trying to help drive their cause and what they want to be done. It doesn't really matter to me how you get there. What does matter to me is that we get there." Janae, I'm going to start with you because we heard last week he was all over the place with his comments. Now really backtracking a little bit. So you good with his explanation?
Thank you, Day-Day. Thank you, Draymond. Now, I did watch the video. It was 13 minutes long of his comments. And as always with Draymond, the passion is there. And I really appreciate that. And I think that that's the most important thing. Passion for all of us to grow. The men's game, the women's game, we're all one together because we're all, striving to be our greatest versions of ourselves as professional athletes. And again, to some degree, what Draymond Green is trying to say is right. We want investment. We want our stories to be told. We are absolutely on the same team, and I appreciate that. I just think sometimes the delivery doesn't really match, the intention, and that's where things can get, confused. We can help him, though, by having these conversations. If our goal is for the game to grow and we need everyone, in the same mission working together, if you support us, let's talk about it so we can bring you up to speed on the work that is actually being done, that's been done in the past and being done currently, that really needs to be amplified. And so for better or for worse, I think, this conversation is good to keep everything, everything top of mind. I think, especially after having and experiencing his thoughts and a lot of the public thoughts and everyone on social media, I immediately am brought back to today, the legacy of Kobe Bryant, who did not say what he was doing or what the problem was, but he chose to show up at games with his beautiful daughters. He trained us in the off season, WNBA players, top women's hoopers, at his facilities. And, my coach is Derek Fisher, and Kobe even reached out to us, the LA Sparks, at an event and kicked it with us. He knew each and every one of our games because he had the passion for it. And, he gave us championship level advice and wisdom. And that's exactly the energy that moved the needle. And that's why we miss him dearly, because we need as many allies, however loud, we need as many allies as possible. We need as many accomplices as possible because we're doing it together. But, it's always great to have some help. And so I appreciate Draymond for clarifying. And I do think Draymond does need a translator at some points, but I think his heart is in the right place.
Janae, his heart is definitely in the right place, which we all appreciate. I think the key with allyship is the volume of your voice when it starts detracting from the people that you say that you're trying to, walk beside or help. And I think the importance of how you deliver messages, you said the word delivery. Delivery is key because I spent more time this week talking about Draymond Green than I have in my entire life. Between our podcast, between First Take, between your show, Janae and Golick, I done talked about this man. And I think that's what kills me because I think I think it's obvious his heart is in the right place. But a lot of people on social media and in the public came with the same energy, like, see, Draymond right. All those women, all they're doing is complaining. And I feel like that's the danger of the wrong delivery. So yes, maybe there does need to be a Draymond translator out there. But you bring up the Kobe point. It's about how do you use your platform, give the platform up? Like, how do you take your sway and give it to somebody else that you want to help? It's not just talking about, oh, what they're doing doesn't work. And I think that was what was very frustrating about it. I have no doubt that Draymond has your number. He can call you up. He can ask the WNBA players. He can ask other women athletes, how can I be of service? How can I help? How can, when I do deals or when I'm doing marketing or merchandising deals, how do I also align with the rest of you. Like, those are tangible steps. And I'm not trying to force Draymond to do anything, but I'm just talking about the action behind the words. You know, you want the action to be louder than the voice sometimes.
Kimberly, you brought up a great word, complaining, because, and you women understand this, if you speak up for yourself, you can be regarded as complainers. You can be regarded as being bitchy from that standpoint. And if anybody should know better than to put that word out there regarding Megan Rapinoe, it should be Draymond Green, because of his mother, Mary Babers, who is a very strong woman, who has always been very strong in her opinions and telling the truth. I'll never get out of a conversation with Draymond Green about 4 years ago, right after the Golden State Warriors were in the middle of the run of winning championships. I said, where does this come from with you being unafraid to speak your mind? He said, when you grew up in my household, Mary Babers, you better speak your mind and know what the blank you're talking about. So if anybody should have had a problem with Draymond Green saying that way, it should have been Draymond Green, based on his environment and the environment where he came from. Because Mary Babers, based on what he has said about her and what I've seen about her, does not hold her tongue, but she's always going to come from a place of honesty. That's not to say that Draymond was not coming from a place of honesty. To your point, Shanae, he needs a Draymond interpreter. There's Draymond speak, and then it needs somebody to tell exactly what the hell he meant when he said what he had to say. But anytime I always hear about somebody talking about a woman speaking up for herself, oh, she's complaining too much. What has she got to complain about? I'm like, dude, stop worrying about worry about she's a female, and listen to her message, or listen to anybody's message, but they're trying to get across. And if it seems as if it's not based on something that's a baseline of truth, then you just shrug it off. But if somebody's coming from a place of, hey, there's inequality here, there's a complete disparity when it comes to male, female, minorities, anything else. Listen to the message and listen to what the person has to say before you try to dismiss it because you don't want to hear it. So if anybody should have had a problem with Draymond's message, it should have been Draymond Green, based on the fact that his mother never held her tongue. And if she felt somebody was being disrespected, or if Draymond was being disrespected, or if she was being disrespected, she would speak up. So, yeah, everybody can have a problem with Draymond Green and going on a 10-minute backtracking against Megan Rapinoe. But in my opinion, the one person that should have had a problem with that should have been Draymond Green, because he grew up around a mom that did not hold her tongue to speak out on what was right, and especially with what was wrong.
Yeah, and I want to get in here for a second, because we talked about this at length yesterday on Shanae and Golick Jr.'s radio show. I thought that it was interesting that Draymond Green felt so passionately about this subject in the first place. I mean, there was so much energy and passion that went into his remarks about women complaining and really not doing anything in terms of getting themselves to where they want to be. So that was the first thing that struck me as odd. But Draymond Green should be one of the first people to realize that this isn't just about what women are doing and what they're receiving in return. I mean, the NCAA tournament just recently was a great example of this. When we looked at the women's and the men's weight rooms and compared the two, no comparison. I mean, there were such stark differences. And it was Steph Curry, one of Draymond's teammates, who brought a lot of attention to this and was like, whoa, NCAA, what's going on here? You know, he realizes that there are some inherent things that are given to women, you know, and realizations that women are kind of raised to believe that they aren't equal and they don't deserve the same things that men have, even if they're doing the exact same things and they're their counterparts. So I just thought it was very odd that Draymond didn't see this when so many people around him have. And Megan Rapinoe said it great. She's like, what are you talking about? We have been screaming this at the top of our lungs. So I'm happy that he backtracked and rephrased maybe what he meant. But it still rubs me the wrong way, and the whole situation is just, it's not great.
Look at you three ladies having the First Take, Her Take podcast. If you had told me, and I've been at ESPN Radio close to 17 years, if you had told me that management of ESPN Radio would have been that thought-provoking to say, let's give these three women a podcast, I'd say, okay, the world has completely ended. Because for the longest time, it was always going to be a male-dominated field, and it still is a male-dominated field. But why would you not want to hear different voices? I don't care if he or she has a radio show. If I don't want to listen to somebody, I don't base that on gender. I base on that person know what the hell they're talking about. I don't want to be bothered anymore. So for the longest time, when people say, well, who wants to hear a woman talking about sports? I'm like, there's some dudes I don't want to hear about talking about sports. So the fact that we're at this point right now where we can have these different voices and people can have a chance to hear different perspectives, male, female, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever, we've gotten to that point that people can no longer just ignore that. And that's why I had a problem with Draymond Green saying that. If anybody should have known better, and we all going to misspeak. No one's perfect. I'm not going to be on the pious box here and say that everything I say is perfect. But when you say something like that and you realize the value of your words and that people are going to hear that, then you go back to where you came from, because I guarantee you Draymond Green's mother would not have put up with that if somebody told her that. So her son saying something like that and then having a 10-minute quicksand moment where the more he wriggled, the deeper he sank. If anybody should have known better about that, it should have been a Draymond Green, especially when it comes to matters of gender and especially when it comes to matters in sports.
Well, hopefully,
and that's
Draymond has
the
learned.
language that Draymond. Oh yeah, I was gonna just say, and that's the language that Draymond knows and understands. Being challenged. One of our favorite gifts is when he's explaining to Kevin Durant, and that was just dissected on that podcast. Like, he is a very confrontational person, and he got that from his mom, and he responds well to being confronted, which is why you saw the plethora of women, especially Megan Rapinoe, that came back at him. And so this is the language that he understands, but Kimberly is right. Using your platform, it's sometimes you realize that that platform can disseminate the wrong versions of information instead of using it to amplify the right versions. And Charlie, to address what you were bringing up earlier, he was having this discussion because he was so excited about the women's Final Four and the women's tournament and how we've had key moments, the controversial call between UConn and Baylor. And he's like, this needs to be showcased. This needs to be seen. We even had Stephen A. say on his show, hey, like, we've got to do better collectively. And I think our network does a great job, but we can always improve. And, you know, it always comes back to, as women, we're breaking out of the mold of what society has forever known. Forever, we've been told and conditioned to be, you know, to appreciate everything that we're given. We've been told to be grateful for everything that we're given, knowing that, hey, you know, you don't drive the revenue, or hey, implying that you're less than when you see the weight room. But the reality is, society needs to be brought up to speed that we are the best at what we do, whether it is in the women's tournament, whether it is professional ranks, not just in the WNBA, but the U.S. women's national team. These are top tier professional athletes striving for greatness, and there's an appetite for it. Whether you like it or not, that's on you, but the game is going to continue to find ways to grow. And I think we're all seeking those those pathways. And that's where the conversation should be, not necessarily using the platform for the others.
You know, the idea of the platform, but also, Freddie, when you're talking about ESPN in this podcast, you know, I think there are moments like Draymond said, you know, a lot of people like to say that they're invested in women's sports, that they care, but are you checking in on, you know, whether it be every weekend, weekly, regular season, whatever? Is it just tournament time? Do you buy merchandise? Do you buy jerseys? Are you invested? With the podcast, you know, I think right now it's good to amplify different voices. Are you going to keep that energy? That's the question. You know, when Draymond spoke, and I will disagree with him, your message was not misconstrued. You said what you said, so that's what we're responding to. But you know, are people going to keep that same energy? I think, you know, the pendulum swings. You know, people say, oh, this is what's hot right now. Like, oh, we got to make sure that, you know, we're more PC, and then we drift back to, okay, let's do it the way we've always done it. We can't do it the way we've always done it. We have to, you know, we have to open up the doors and put more seats around the table, and people that have, you know, positions of power, people that have those platforms that can do right by other people and give people that don't have that have a tiny microphone, a megaphone. Draymond's voice is loud. We heard it all week.
Well, you got to hold people.
You got to hold people accountable, and we are doing that. We're doing that with him, and he will be a better ally. That's my thought. I think he realized this week.
The fact that we're having this conversation,
and in the spirit of the podcast, yes, I just, like, in the spirit of our First Take Her Take podcast, as women that are trying to push boundaries, our DMs professionally are open. If you want to reach out, if you want to do business, if you want to invest, we'd love to hear from you. So don't just step to the podium and say, hey, what are you doing? Like, if you have the means, which Draymond definitely does have the means, which we're very grateful that he's an ally, step to us. You know, we've been taking this uphill battle. You can step toward this as well, and we can meet in the middle.
Yeah, hopefully Draymond takes more of an initiative now that he made these comments and is really embroiled in this situation to help push women in the direction they need to go in. And also, for all of you watching, why don't you take some initiative? Go subscribe to the First Take, Her Take podcast. Support some of your favorite women at ESPN. We would very much appreciate it. All right, let's move on because guess what else we have to talk about here on First Take? Draymond Green.
Oh, no.